Welcome back everybody. Today we're gonna work a little bit on cleaning up the UI in the content creation dialog and displaying some information. Primarily what I want to do is take the next steps towards moderation, right? So when we're gonna create content, it's gonna go towards moderation for people to approve, disapprove, comments and stuff like that. So let's get started, right? First of all, what I want to take care of is if we take a look at our application, the front looks a little bit wacky. We can improve that. So on the create, as we've gone over the last video, the close button is actually a liability that you think you're pressing save, but you press close and you have in the submissions, right? You have the button right there, right? It's so easy to just press that and close and exit your form. And probably not something that you want to do all the time, right? So let's go ahead and take care of that. What I want to do is I want to essentially allow every single component to close, okay? So let's see how we do this. So in our content creation dialog, we have the component where the component is pretty much its self-contained thing. So the close button should reside in the component itself. I don't want to be maintaining the stuff like title, close buttons and whatnot in this sort of list. When you make these sort of lists to render your components in the UI, you want to try generally keep them as simple as possible, otherwise they can become problematic. So that's just me speaking from experience. So what do we want to do? We want to basically grab this thing and we want to get rid of it. So we essentially, cross that out. And what are we looking at? We're looking at trick information. So let's start with trick steps. And what do we got here? So we got this one big V stepper step. And when I was playing around with this, I've pretty much basically came up with the solution that I'm going to be using a card, right? And the card is going to be that bit for me that's gonna basically have the title up here, and then this body will remain the same. And primarily the reason why I chose this and when playing around is no secret. I've mentioned this a couple of times already in the series. I'm copying YouTube, I'm copying Instagram. They did the design parts, the hard part for me, why would I not copy them? This is more or less how they do it, so let's go ahead and dedicate these special titles to these forms, and let's say create trick. And then what we're going to do is let's drop this to a new line. We're gonna use, actually, let's put a V button first so we can see what it looks like. It's just going to be an icon, and in the icon we're just gonna have MDI close icon, right? So the icon's gonna be here. What do we want to do if we want to separate this? The spacer, right? Best component. There we go. It just puts it there, right? So now when we press this, we want to be able to just close the thing. But before we do that, I just want to address this header right here. So you can see how the corners are rounded here. So let's get rid of the rounding and the elevation here. Not particularly, what's it called? Don't particularly like that animation, elevation, sorry. So on the V stepper itself, let's go ahead, or actually maybe let's start here. So first of all, around at 0, let's see if that squares out our, what's it called, header. It doesn't. Let's go ahead then and move this class on the stepper. And this should now square this away, so that's fine. Now we want to basically reduce elevation, so elevation 0, and that's gonna like press it away as well. So the next thing, as you might see, there's a little bit of space here. Let's squash it, right? And again, if it's gonna start looking wonky on the, what's it called, on mobile, we can fix it. But primarily what I'm doing here is I'm just looking, is it padding, is it margin that I need to remove? Looks like padding, so padding top 0. Let's see, squash it. It's squashed up. Did I pick the wrong component? V content, I put it on the stepper items, no problem. Let's move the step. Let's move the class. And there we go. So the margin is no longer there. It's a little bit more squashed, and the close button is over here. Now, we are going to be reusing this card and title layout between all of the other components. So at the moment, what I want to do is I want to go over how we can share that functionality between all of these. So going to the content creation dialog, the cancel upload, we basically are going to move that into a mixin, and we're going to share it between the content creation. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll create a Java file and we'll just call it shared for shared functionality, right? And we're just going to export const close. This is the part where we say we just want some close functionality, right? So cancel upload is going to be part of that. What do we need for the cancel upload? Well, we need this method, right? So let's go ahead and grab that. And here we are going to put methods. I'm going to sprinkle this out. I think I'm going to start calling the construction sprinkling it out. I will grab this real quick and I'm going to put it up here. So I can go ahead and grab map actions. I don't know, that sprinkling it out really put a smile on my face there. And I'm gonna wrap close just in case. Alright, so I'm gonna be calling close instead of cancel upload. So just proxying it. I feel like it's just a better way to do it rather than calling this directly in case we want to start doing something else. Although I'm not sure, because this is a close button. We want to close, so that's what I'm gonna call the action. But this pretty much encapsulates a little bit more than just closing, because we're gonna do all this thing because the content creation dialog kind of contains that functionality. So maybe we need to separate the activation and stuff like that. But again, it's kind of already working, and I don't want to keep spending time trying to get it perfect. If it's working, it's working. Leave it be. Let's go ahead and put this mutation here. I'm gonna remove the map actions and cancel upload. I'm gonna remove this bit, right? So I no longer need that. That functionality should be imported into here. So as far as mixins goes, what we're gonna do is right here. Oh, and another thing, because as I said before, we don't really, we removed the watchers, but we forgot to clean up a little bit. We don't really need this reset data thing as long as we're just closing the component, because if we reset the video upload, we clear the component here, okay? So we don't really need to reset this data, okay? And this init state, we can go ahead and put it back here as well. So let's go ahead and get rid of this. We'll grab the init state function and we're gonna put it here. If you want to keep it separate, it's up to you, okay? Let's put this here. Next thing, let's go ahead and assign some mixins. So array, and we can grab close, and here you should see something appear from shared. And that's it, right? So we have the close mixin, F12, we got navigation, we got close. Go back to trick steps with the button. On click, we can trigger close. And again, here you should be able to navigate to the function that's actually doing it, right? So that's pretty much trick steps. So if we click this, it closes, right? So let's just verify that us moving all the state bits around pretty much clears it up. Not sure why this refuses to close after. So close once and again. Close twice, okay. Yeah, not sure why I couldn't close it before. Maybe some leftover state or whatever. Now, as this is done, let's go ahead and move over to the next one. So submission steps, pretty much the same story. Let's go ahead, copy up this much, so the vcard and vtitle. We're gonna put it here. And what you can do is you can just, what I'm doing is I'm opening. I don't know if this is going to be the same for you in your ID, but if I open the angle bracket and do the slash, it automatically completes the incomplete thing for me. So I'm cool with that. Go here, expand the selection till we grab all, move it up once. Cool. So we're here. So instead of create trick, what do? We create the submission. The rest stays the same. Close. All we need to do is import the mixin, right? So mixins, close. Oh, get it from the shared init state. As I've said before, again, these components are going to be cleared, so we don't need that. Let's clean that up a little bit. One thing that happens here is that we actually have hide. So I don't think any other components will need hide. This is something that you can move to this shared if you need to share it. So think about this one as like the logic that you can share, and because you can have multiples of these, like hide or whatever, you know, you can introduce those. But generally, I think this is fine. And yeah, so having the hide here is fine. And in the create submissions, I think that's the part where in the end the reset happens, which is again just fine. One thing, let's clean this one up. I don't think this will change now. Fingers crossed, toes crossed, everything's crossed. What we want to do now is we want to make sure it looks good, right? So same kind of changes as I've had before on the trick steps. Let's grab the rounded thing, put it on the V-stepper. We'll get rid of the rounded. Grab the elevation, put it on the header. Grab the padding 0, put it on the V-content. Not sure what all this space is about. Clean it up a little bit. And here we got it. We will sort out this. I'm not a particular fan of this file selection button, and we will sort it out later. But yeah, closing it, cool, works. So we grab something, we close it, fine. Difficulty, same thing. Another thing about is this save button. Probably want to align it a little bit more. So let's complete transferring the other forms, and then we will come back to that button to basically align it for all of them or whatever. So difficulty form, we already kind of have the card here. Let's go ahead and just grab this much where we have the spacer and the close button. Okay. Next thing, again, the init state can be moved. Let's put the mixins in here. Close mixin. Awesome. And again, this should just work. Let's go ahead and, yep, okay, well, I just tested. I was like gonna close it to test it, but there it is. So that works. The form is pretty self-explanatory. Category form, same thing. Still using Control Tab to swap between pages. Really fast, really comfortable. Again, init state. Let's move it. Mixins. Close. Boom. Okay, so one thing is, for example, cannot find this. Oh, I forgot the comma here. Okay, I guess now it should find it. No. Moved it into the how did that get messed up so badly? I didn't copy the whole thing. All right, let's try this again. I'll put this here. Right. Mixins. Closed. Awesome. Comma. Cool. So yeah, finds the save. All good. Another thing that I was gonna say is you can see how on these categories and difficulties and stuff like that, we don't actually do the reset to close the form the same way that we do it here. So what we can actually do, we can stop using this reset and we can just, you know, use the close instead. So let's go ahead and remove this one, and on the reset we will do close, because again the uploads don't happen there. On the difficulty form, again we will just use close, and on the category form, again let's just use this close and remove that extra bracket. So yeah, what this will allow us to do, if we're just creating category like variation tricks that consist of more than 2 elements, right, and save. And yeah, so that closes the form now. So at this point where I want to close it, maybe redirect, maybe when we call save, maybe we put like a default save in this shared functionality. So when you save it, it puts you to the moderation form. Again, this is something that I'm going to have a active think about, and we'll see what it is implemented. I'll share my ideas, my decision-making process, right? So another thing, when we have the save button, let's style it up a little bit, right? So class, deflex, justify center. This was on the category, puts it there. Cool. I will still think about the colors a little bit, because you know, this having this default black button isn't perfect. Isn't not even that it's perfect. It's not ideal. We kind of want to depict which paths the user wants to take, and which paths, which parts of the UI should be invisible, right? Where it's kind of like we can see the information clearly and we're just absorbing it, and then when we're thinking about decisions, which paths should we take, right? So at the moment, save doesn't stand out so much. But for now, the alignment, I'll take it. Let's go ahead and just put it on other steps, trick steps. I think this was the other one on the save there. So when I go on the tricks, we got the next and the save. The next is really suffering. Let's go ahead and put this here. Closing tag, realign. Okay, so the next is there. I'm not gonna worry so much about the repetitions of the buttons for now. Let's go ahead and just close that and make sure that the submission isn't suffering either. I don't want to upload anything right now. Let's just check this out manually. So in the submission steps, yep, so the next button pretty much suffers the same way that it does in the tricks. So let's go ahead, copy this button. We're gonna replace the next because we got the step here. It's fine. Same thing here, next. And the save button. We can just copy the class, put it here. Cool. So this pretty much cleans up these forms, right? So the data creation forms. So that's fine. I'm cool with that. Next thing is the welcome screen. I kind of want to start pushing it towards, this is the first thing that the users are going to be landing on. Let's make a little bit of progress. So as we work on episodes, I'm going to see it every time, and I'm going to slowly have, I basically, so it's in the back of my mind. If I don't know immediately what I want for one of my pages, I kind of make a little advancement on it, or I put it in one direction and I leave it there and I go work on something else that I know what I want to do with. But what actually happens is when I sleep, during the day, etc., I don't know what is actually happening, but I know that slowly in the back of my mind, that idea is developed automatically. Again, as the autonomy, I don't know how that happens, but I know that my brain automatically solves problems while I sleep, while I'm not actually actively thinking about the problem, etc. So Rich Hickey called it hammock-driven development. I think it's a real thing, and I firmly believe in it, right? So we're going to slowly advance the front and then leave it be. So maybe in the future, we're going to have some other ideas. So let's go ahead into the pages. On the index page, what we're going to do is we're going to just style this a little bit. So we're just going to create the sections. We're going to display the tricks, categories, and difficulties. So where we got the tricks here, let's also grab the categories, and the difficulties. Okay, so we got these. Let's go ahead and expand these out just because of what I'm gonna do. And actually, it's probably worth showing you where to sort of catch yourself, because I'm doing it preemptively because I've practiced this. But the v-tricks, we don't need it because this should be an empty array, so we were not gonna iterate, right? So we're gonna put this on the v button. We don't need to iterate through the div. The button itself, well, we'll need the div, but the button is what we will need, right? And we're just gonna be displaying the name. So we got the div. Let's get another div. And in here, we will get a paragraph where we'll say something like tricks, right? Let's format this a little bit. I already know that I want this to be more or less of a header kind of thing, right? Cool. Class, deflex, we want to center this thing, right? So justify center. Cool. Flex column, right? Make it conform. Now instead of justify, we have to align. Okay, so there it is. Buttons to close, no big. Class, mx margin on the x sides by 1. Should separate them a little bit. Sweet. Later on, we'll replace them with cards, and they will display like the first submissions, or you know, like if you have categories, first trick with the first submission, and you can kind of just, so you can kind of get an idea of what a backwards roll is. It doesn't matter whose submission it is. Maybe like one of the more higher rated ones or stuff like that. And if it's some kind of category, just grab the first clip from that category and stuff like that. So having this sort of setup, the first sort of like initial reaction is right. We need the categories. Let's copy this and let's just start replacing these. So it's something that I mentioned, right? And this is where you can catch yourself. Instead of repeating HTML, write a little bit of JavaScript. It's gonna help you in the long run, right? So again, we don't want to be repeating this HTML. We want to rather make this a render through JavaScript. So let's go ahead and create a v4 for each one of these sections, right? So let's create sections. And here we're going to return an array with objects. We're going to have a collection of something, and we're, what's it called? We're quite lucky that, well, maybe it's by design, but all of these have IDs and names and stuff like that. So the patterns and conventions are aligning, right? So we got the collection that we're displaying here, which is pretty much all that we'll have there. And we just need the title, right? So tricks. Cool. Make this a string. Awesome. Put a comma on the end. Copy this a couple of times. Change the collections. Categories. Difficulties. I hope I spelled that correctly. Let's just copy this. Make sure we got navigation, because otherwise I spelled it correctly. Paste this here and replace the D with a capital, right? So S in sections. So now we're rendering sections. So let's go ahead and grab our title. And instead of tricks, we are now rendering a collection. So instead of C, we have, let's rather go for item. TID, here you can see we're struggling a little bit. So let's go ahead and click the nav or route factory, which again, we're just gonna have an ID, and for the trick, this is going to evaluate something to something like trick/ID, right? And we're just gonna pass it into the function here, and easy money. I don't know. Yeah, well, let's grab this here. So item route factory, or rather this is going to be on the collection, And in here, all we want to do is pass the ID, right? And then on the item here, we just want to display the name. And that's all there is. And let's go ahead and refresh this. Route factory is not a function, and that's probably because I haven't implemented it on the other parts. So let's go ahead and fix that. So category, and here we have difficulty, right? Format this a little bit. I think that should be all right. Let's give this a refresh. And there we have it. So we have our tricks, categories, and difficulties. Tricks are not displaying because for some reason I have referenced trick. So there are tricks. So, I mean, that's all right. But imagine all of these will have their own sort of trick assigned with it. But you can see how the UI slowly coming along, right? So let's go the last sort of, I don't know, mile with it. What I will do is I'll create a div here. So when I iterate through these, I can put a little, I can put a little V divider on the end, okay? And all that's gonna do is it's gonna give me some space here, not very good space, margin Y, 5. Yeah, so, I mean, there we have it. There's obviously going to be a little bit more of everything, but for now this is fine. And I guess the last piece is the web client there. Let's go ahead and fix that up. So Nuxt config, where we have the default title here, let's go ahead and remove the package environment there, and we're just gonna say welcome, right? And I think that should start to recompile. Yep. No, we'll refresh on its own. Awesome. And there we have the welcome. Okay. I think I covered all the sort of minor points in this episode, a chill episode. We had a few intense ones before this, so before we dive deep into C# and moderation and how we want to tackle this, just a little relaxation, taking it easy, a bit of a meditative episode, you know, go make a cup of tea. And anyway, hopefully you enjoyed this episode. Leave a like, subscribe, tell me what you think in the comments, or if you have any questions. I also stream on Wednesdays and Sundays, so if you're into that kind of thing, join my Discord channel. I leave a lot of updates there. Make sure to come say hi. You can also ask me a lot of questions. That's the primary reason that I stream, is so people can come and ask me questions live and interact and stuff like that. Well, you get the idea. Anyway, have a good day, and hopefully I'll see you in my other episodes.